修復歲月痕跡。全新 Divine 極致再生精華油隆重登場。
L'Occitane en Provence。
估下我係邊個？
你猜我係誰？
我俾人捉咗，快啲幫我還錢啊！
我出咗事，你入3000蚊俾我應急先啦。
There are many types of telephone scams. Don't let scammers turn your phone into an automatic teller machine. Stay calm when you receive suspicious calls.
係咪呃我㗎？
Talk to someone you trust.
有人話仔有急事要錢喎。
打俾阿仔問下先啦。
Verify the caller's identity. Safeguard your personal data.
你究竟係邊個啊？
Verify the caller's identity. Don't get conned.
The medical staff who dealt with America's first case of Ebola tell the inside story. The controversial science of in vitro fertilization that may weed out deadly diseases from the gene pool. Plus, the Foo Fighters. Saturday night, 60 Minutes at 6:30 on Pearl.
A pay rise recommended for high-ranking civil servants, but nothing for low-ranking government workers. International cycling event gets red flagged due to Occupy movement. And you can call the San Francisco Giants a dynasty after another World Series title. Good evening. The Standing Commission on Civil Service Salaries and Conditions of Service has proposed a 3% pay increase for around 3,400 high-ranking civil servants. The Commission has also suggested that low-ranking civil servant staff salaries remain unchanged. Rani Samtani has the story.
The Standing Commission compared the pay level gap between the government and 128 organizations in the private sector. It found that senior-level civil servant salaries are lower than the corresponding salaries in the private sector by 8%. Based on its civil service pay adjustment mechanism, the Standing Commission has proposed raising the salary for these high-ranking posts.
Because this is a scientific survey, we base our recommendations on the findings of the survey. So this is not whether we would like to increase a certain band more than the others. For the master pay scale 0.45 to 49, there is a substantial difference of 8%.
A 3% pay rise is recommended for around 3,400 high-ranking civil servants such as senior managers, including engineers or lawyers, with monthly salaries ranging from $89,000 to $103,000. The proposed hikes range from $2,000 to $3,000. Other ranking civil servants were found to be earning 2 to 4% less compared to those holding similar posts in the private sector. The Commission said the differences are insignificant, so this group of government employees should not receive any pay increases. The survey also found that some lower-ranking civil servants are receiving higher wages compared to the private sector. But according to the survey mechanism, an adjustment is not required for this group. The Standing Commission will submit its report to the Chief Executive for consideration. It will then go to the Legislative Council's Finance Committee for funding approval before the pay adjustment can take effect. Rani Samtani, TVB News.
Meanwhile, a survey of more than 100 local companies shows about half of the employers were planning to give an average 4.5% pay hike to their staff next year. Rani Samtani has more.
The Hong Kong Institute of Human Resource Management surveyed 101 companies from 17 different sectors, covering 137,000 full-time employees. 80 companies indicated that they will review salaries between January and April next year.
For the past 4 years, the pay adjustment have been positive, on average, between 4.2 to 4.5. Hong Kong is actually an economy which have been quite stable and backed by China.
Out of 52 companies that already budgeted next year's salary adjustment, 2 said they would freeze salary increases. The rest said salary adjustments will be between 4.1 and 5.9%. That's an overall average pay rise of 4.5% projected for next year. The financial services and construction sectors are expected to get the highest pay rise. But the survey was conducted before the start of the Occupy protests. The Institute of Human Resource Management noted that many employers had not considered the impact of the demonstrations.
It is very difficult to comment on that. I don't know. I have myself actually walked on to the street to see what's actually happening. It's really difficult to predict what's going to happen tomorrow.
Because it is unknown when the civil disobedience movement will come to an end, Mock said it is difficult to say how the economy and the labor market will be affected. The Institute of Human Resource Management said it will conduct another survey in January next year to reevaluate the situation from September to December and update its pay increase forecast accordingly. Ronnie Samtani, TVB News.
Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development Gregory So says some business travelers have cancelled their trips to Hong Kong because of the Occupy movement. And an international road cycling competition slated for December has also been cancelled. Disappointing news for cyclists today. An international road cycling tournament supposed to be held in the city in December has now been cancelled. Professional cyclists and thousands of amateurs were expected to participate in the competition. The organizers said a number of factors led to the cancellation of the event. They include the race route, which would pass through Longwu Road in Admiralty, police manpower, and the amount of time needed to organize the event. Meanwhile, Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development Gregory So said today some business travelers had cancelled their visits because of the Occupy protests. For example, when the IT sector was organizing a conference here in Hong Kong, some overseas companies expressed worries about the protests and said their employees would not attend such events, he said. Gregory So also added that even though the number of mainland visitors has gone up in October up until Sunday, figures showed that travelers from other parts of the world have dropped by 3.7%. Some tour guides worried that the protests could affect their business in November and December, which is the peak season. Hotel operators are also concerned. Michael Lee of the Federation of Hong Kong Hotel Owners said according to the latest bookings, the Christmas occupancy rate at many hotels this year may end up at around 70 to 80%, lower than the 80 to 90% in previous years. A further response today from Occupy Central organizer Benny Tai to questions regarding his handling of donations to the University of Hong Kong. Tai said he passed a $800,000 donation to the university for the purpose of setting up the civil referendum in June, while he was organizing the Occupy Central movement. Owen Feng reports.
According to Benny Tai, the civil referendum conducted in late June was part of the plan when Occupy Central with Love and Peace, or OCLP, was established. Accordingly, an $800,000 anonymous donation was given through Reverend Chu Yu-ming to the University of Hong Kong Public Opinion Program for setting up and implementing the voting system. Tai emphasized that the civil referendum did not happen out of the blue. And before OCLP was established, Tai had stated that he would only accept donations of up to $10,000. But he said the decision was subsequently retracted. Meanwhile, a group of people submitted a petition to the University of Hong Kong demanding that the university suspend and investigate Robert Chung, director of the Public Opinion Program. The group is unhappy that the program received the anonymous donation from Benny Tai, saying it believes OCLP manipulated the result of the civil referendum. Elsewhere, members of the Justice Alliance rallied outside a police station, urging the authorities to investigate the donation. Letitia Lee, convener of the alliance, finds the source of the donation problematic. She also questioned if there was any money laundering involved. Lee said she's already requested a meeting with the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Hong Kong and will submit a complaint to the ICAC on this matter. Owen Fung, TVB News.
The police have charged a 56-year-old man with one count of wounding in connection with an alleged assault on an RTHK reporter. Police say Mak Ka Wai was attacked while filming on Nathan Road during the early days of the Occupy protests. Mak suffered injuries to his eyes and nose. The alleged attacker, surnamed So, will appear at the Kuntong Magistracy on November 11th. The Office of the Privacy Commissioner for Personal Data said there's been a sharp increase in cyberbullying inquiries and complaint cases since the Occupy protests began. The office published leaflets to remind Internet users to abide by the law, even in the cyber world. Li Jun takes a look.
Technological innovations unquestionably increase connectivity between netizens. But some might be abusing the internet by calling on their counterparts to disclose personal data of an individual. The Office of the Privacy Commissioner for Personal Data, or PCPD, warned that people whose photos were posted online or those whose personal data was leaked could fall prey to cyberbullying. It's been more than a month since the Occupy movement began. So far, the PCPD received a total of 70 inquiries and complaint cases regarding cyberbullying. That's 70% higher compared with last year. PCPD published leaflets to alert the public that cyberbullying could lead to devastating effects. The office added that there are no related laws in Hong Kong to regulate such behavior. The office also reminded members of the public to report to the police if their cases carry a criminal element, or they may lodge a complaint directly to the related social media network. And PCPD would intervene if the case involves wrongful collection of personal data. Liz Yun, TVB News.
Turning overseas now. A former agriculture minister of Scottish descent is now leader of Zambia and Africa's first white head of state in 20 years. James Aiken has more on the dramatic change of leadership and what's next for Zambia in Southern Africa.
Guy Scott takes over as interim leader of Zambia after President Michael Sata died in a London hospital. He is the first white African leader since Nelson Mandela beat F.W. de Klerk in South Africa's 1994 presidential election. Scott, who had been serving as Zambia's vice president, has caused diplomatic controversy in the past, once describing South Africans as backward in a newspaper interview. The 70-year-old Cambridge-educated economist was born in Zambia to Scottish parents, but because his parents were not born in Zambia, Scott cannot run for the presidency. Nonetheless, in a nation that only won independence from Britain 50 years ago, opinion is mixed about Africa's first white head of state in 20 years.
When we say Mr. Guy Scott should be the president, that will simply mean we are bringing back colonialism, we are bringing back the old days, because even the whites will come and take over. Do we want to bring back colonialism in Zambia? No.
I think Mr. Guy Scott is qualified to do the job, because they wouldn't have chosen him to be vice president if he was not qualified to do that.
Sata's cause of death has not been released, but the 77-year-old was undergoing medical treatment and had been ill for some time. The former police officer and factory worker was known as King Cobra because of his often abrasive criticism of foreign mining companies operating in Zambia's copper belt. Analysts say Zambia's defense minister and finance minister are the most likely contenders for the presidency. An election will be held in 3 months. James Aiken, TVB News.
The World Health Organization says the spread of Ebola appears to be slowing in Liberia, the worst-hit West African country, but warned it would be wrong to assume the virus is under control. And debate continues to rage in the United States over the mandatory 21-day quarantine policy for anyone coming back from that region who had contact with Ebola patients. Alan Buccaneer reports.
The U.S. military quarantines its troops on return from West Africa, something Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel approved.
The cohorts are different. They are not volunteers.
But U.S. President Barack Obama has said he's against the mandatory quarantine of aid workers returning, since it may stop volunteers from going to West Africa. Standing with a group of medical workers, Obama said Americans must continue to travel to the worst-hit countries.
To prevent its spread, and ultimately to keep Americans safe, we have to go to the source, while preparing for the few cases that we see here, and protecting our healthcare workers who are treating patients both here at home and abroad.
The World Health Organization says the fight to stem the spread of Ebola is starting to bear fruit. It said the outbreak seems to be slowing down in Liberia, but warned against complacency.
I think we need to be careful. We're not saying this hasn't dropped off a cliff. Like